All right, good afternoon. Hello, Fordham alumni and our family. Ed Kull here, Director of Athletics. Great to be with you with another of our special alumni connections and alumni catch-up. Very honored and a very pleasure for me to welcome all of you to PJ Carlesimo, a Fordham alum of 1971. Obviously Hall of Fame coaching career, not only in college, but also the NBA. We'll talk a little bit about that. But I want to start off with PJ and of course allow him to welcome himself. But I want to start by saying, as a new athletic director as of February of this year, it's a real honor and a pleasure to speak with PJ, not just because of his incredible basketball pedigree, and we'll talk about the NBA finals as well, but I'm honored to sit in the Director of Athletics chair that his father sat in for a little over a decade at Fordham University. PJ, please say hello, and again, it's an honor to be with you.
Eddie, it's always great to renew my ties. I probably can't be further away. We live in Seattle. We've lived here for the last 15 years since we coached the Sonics in the last year they were here. So I just don't get back to New York as much as I would like to. Do mainly NBA, do a little bit of college. And the Knicks had hit some tough times, but Tibbs has them going again. So hopefully I'll get some more trips back to New York and I'll get to renew a lot of acquaintances. But it's a special place for us. My father was class of 40 with Coach Lombardi and a lot of great Fordham athletes. A really good time for Fordham football, of course. And I'm the oldest of 10, and all 10 of us graduated from Fordham. So to say that Fordham is a special place for us doesn't quite do it justice.
I've gotten to speak with and know a few of your siblings over my couple of years here at Fordham, and your family is truly a Fordham legacy in terms of their, not only just their presence at Fordham, but obviously going back to your dad to the 40s, as you said, heck of an athlete, tremendous athletic director, wonderful, legendary in terms of his position for the NIT and salvaging and building the NIT to what it was in those 70s and early on. And it's an honor to be with you. You know, PJ, you graduated in 71, you jumped into coaching. So your first job was assistant coach at Fordham. I believe you also were the freshman coach at Fordham, and you coached a decent basketball player, but I know a heck of an actor and probably the most famous alum to come out of Fordham University, Denzel Washington.
You know, and Eddie, he really was not a good actor. I spent a lot of time with him in between practices and stuff, helping him with a lot of his acting techniques. And he's always been good about giving me credit for that. But no, Denzel was just has been over the years a great Fordham man. He's been so good to Fordham, to Mount Vernon where he grew up, and of course to the Boys and Girls Club. But that was the days when it was sub-varsity. We kind of went through a crazy era. My freshman year, Johnny Bach was the head coach, and I played for Dick Tarrant, who went on obviously he had been a fantastic high school coach in New Jersey, and then what he did down at Richmond was incredible. And then my sophomore and junior year, we played for one of the best basketball players in Fordham history, Ed Conlon, probably top 2 or 3 of all time. And then senior year, Digger Phelps for 1 year. So I kind of went through the gamut, 3 different coaches. And I was probably, believe it or not, going to go to Fordham Law School, which is what my father wanted me to do. Of course, he wanted me not to get into coaching because he knew what a crazy profession it is. But when Digger left to go to Notre Dame, Hal Whistle came in, and Hal gave me my first coaching opportunity. So I got to work for 4 years as an assistant to Hal from 71 to 75. And that's when I got a chance to coach Denzel on it. We called him sub-varsity in those days. They had just changed the rule, and freshmen were eligible now for varsity. But Denzel was on that team and really was. You know, people always ask me how good a basketball player he was. He was a very good basketball player for an Academy Award-winning actor. I mean, I'm not saying he wasn't going to make the varsity at Fordham, but he really was. He was a good player, and he was Lincoln Center, so it was hard. You know, the Ram van or the subway back and forth for our athletes that take most of their classes down at Lincoln Center. It's really a struggle. It's really a sacrifice for them to play, and we were about the lowest on the rung of practice time for the sub-varsity freshmen, and we were behind virtually everybody else on campus. So it wasn't easy for Denzel to get back and forth, and it was a lot of fun. And he's been a good friend over the years. He's been very loyal to us personally, and I know very loyal to Fordham.
He has been, Coach, and Denzel has been very, very supportive of Fordham, especially our arts school and opportunities for our students who are pursuing arts and acting down at Lincoln Center. You dropped a bunch of tremendous names there, and obviously you're reminiscing, whether it be Ed Collin, who's, as you know, jersey hangs in the Rose Hill Gymnasium as one of our best of all time. Johnny Bach, who even Michael Jordan has been quoted as giving a lot of credit for his incredible career and learnings when he was on Phil Jackson's staff and the Bulls staff during that incredible NBA run in Jordan's career. And then Digger Phelps, it's funny, Coach, I spoke to Digger. I speak to Digger somewhat. I try to reach out to him as much as I can. I spoke to him recently, and I always tell him this, Coach, and I'm curious your thoughts. That 70-71 team, I hear that from every alum. You know, why can't Fordham get back to those glory days and selling out the Garden and winning games? And I know you have some thoughts on that. And I always say to Digger, I'm like, Digger, I would have thought when I've arrived at Fordham, you would have coached here 25 years, the way people talk about you and that team. And to know that it was a magical one-year run, and the whole joke that he beat Notre Dame at the Garden, which got him the Notre Dame job eventually. What was it like, that incredible team? It would have been your 50th anniversary last year. Obviously, COVID and the craziness of the pandemic. I promise you we're going to honor you guys this upcoming season. But your thoughts of that magical ride of 70-71?
It was, first of all, there was a little history with Digger, which is kind of interesting. I grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Before my father came to Fordham, he was the athletic director and a football coach at University of Scranton, another great Jesuit institution. And he was there for 20-some years and would never have left there for any place other than Fordham. And ironically, my sophomore year at Fordham, not that I didn't want to go to Scranton, but I wasn't really thrilled about going to a school where my father was the athletic director. And he gets the job at Fordham my sophomore year. But Digger coached at Hazleton St. Gabe's, where Chuck Daly grew up, where Joe Madden grew up. And Digger coached there, Hazleton St. Gabe's. I think won a state championship when we were in high school. Knew him from Camp St. Andrew. And then he was Dick Harder's assistant at the University of Pennsylvania. And when my father hired him to succeed Coach Carlin, candidly, it wasn't a popular hire because he was following, at that point, and still it's a good debate. I put Charlie Yelverton number one and Coach Conlon number two, but I mean, it's a great debate who the best basketball player that ever played for Fordham was. But when Digger came in, kind of an unknown guy, a freshman coach from an Ivy League school, granted it was Penn, it was, the best school I think they were 26-0 the year before he came. But it was not really a popular hire. And everybody said, who is this guy? What are they going to do? Blah, blah, blah. Well, he came into a great situation, truth be told. We had been to NIT our freshman year and our junior year. Freshman and sophomore, freshman and junior, I forget which one, 2 of the 3 years. And we had a really good class. Charlie Yelverton was a great, great player. Billy Maynard from Week Wake High School in Newark. Jackie Burek from Canevin out in Pittsburgh. And then you had Kenny Charles, who went on to a great college career. George Zambetti, who is probably a better doctor than he is a basketball player, but still was a very good basketball player for Fordham Prep and had a great career for us. Tommy Sullivan from St. Helena's in the Bronx, Bart Waterwitz. I mean, I'm forgetting guys. We really were a good team. And Digger came in, and the system he put in, he wanted to press. He wanted to press for 40 minutes, and he felt we had the ability to do that. And Sully was like a 6'4.5" center. But I mean, all those guys were really athletic. They could pass and catch and shoot the ball. And it was unbelievable. It was just the perfect system for our team. And he just never missed a beat. And I swear every button that Digger pushed that year was the right button. He really did not a good job. He did an exceptional job. And I think we won our first 12 or 13 games. We lost a home game to Temple Zone, which he knew very well. He had coached in the Big Five at Penn, but they beat us in those days. The Saturday afternoon game was the only time you were on TV. I think it was C.D. Chesley and Saturday afternoon game at Fordham. We were 12 or 13-0, and they beat us. And then fast forward to February, I believe, we beat Notre Dame in the Garden. We sold out the Garden 2 weeks in a row. Thursday was college basketball doubleheaders in those days, and there had never been a sellout. The new Garden had opened second semester our freshman year in 68, I think it was. I think we might have played in both buildings freshman year, the old Garden in the November of 67, and then we played in the new Garden in January, February of '68. But we sold it out back to back for Notre Dame, which was a great win. That was Austin Carr, Sid Catlett, Collis Jones. I mean, a really good Johnny D team at Notre Dame. And then we lost in overtime to Marquette the following week, another Thursday, another sellout, 1-point game. We had chance to win it down the stretch, and Marquette won, and we ended up the regular season, whatever we were, I guess 25-2 or 24-2. And then we won our first NCAA game at St. John's, same gym, but it looked a little different in those days, Alumni Hall. We played Furman, and then we went down to NC State and Reynolds Coliseum. And we really thought, we were positive we were going to the Final Four. And the team that we were worried about was Penn, who had been undefeated and who had beaten Villanova in the regular season soundly, had really trounced them. And Villanova got us. Villanova beat us, and Penn beat South Carolina. We ended up playing South Carolina. In those days, there were consolation games, and we beat them in the consolation. It was all New York City guys. It was Johnny Roach and Tom Owens and all those guys who had grown up in the city and went down with Frank McGuire to the Underground Railroad. And they were playing there, and we lost to Nova, and then Nova ended up, ironically, I was just talking to Jay Wright 2 nights ago in Vegas with the Olympics. He's one of Pop's assistants, and we were having dinner, and we were talking about it, and they had a vacate. If you look back now in 71 NCAA, it'll say UCLA won the championship, and there was like no runner-up because Villanova had a vacate for some reason. Howard Porter had signed with an agent or something like that. It wasn't really a bad violation by standards today, but they had to vacate their trophy, and we never got to the Final Four. But that year, wherever we played, I mean, I remember the BC game at BC. That was when they played in Roberts Center. I mean, everywhere we went, there were sellouts. Charlie outplayed. He played, like I mentioned, he played Austin Carr and Sid Catlett when we played Notre Dame. When we played Marquette, Dean Meminger, who we played with at Rice High School, he guarded him. We beat UMass. He guarded Dr. J. We played them up in Curry Hicks Cage in Amherst. Everybody was playing in gyms like our gym right now, to be honest with you, back in those days. But Charlie, everybody he played the entire year, he outplayed. You could not have a better year than Charlie Elverton had as a senior. And I don't know if you could have a better year coaching than Digger did. And unfortunately, Johnny D retired at Notre Dame. The opportunity was there. And unhappily, it was obviously, turned out to be a fine career move for Digger. It would have been a tough act to follow. I guarantee you that. There was we weren't going to be 26-3. In fact, we went out to Notre Dame and whacked them pretty good the next year at Notre Dame. We had a good series with Notre Dame and Marquette in those days when Digger was at Notre Dame and Al McGuire was at Marquette. So it was a lot of fun. It was a great time. And that year was, people are not exaggerating when they say that was as good a year basketball-wise in the city as any school. St. John's, I'm sure, had some unbelievable years with Mully and even back before that with Joe Lapchick. But it was a very special year and one that all the older Fordham alums like myself remember very well.
You give me chills, and the hair on my arm stand up listening to you break down the memories of that season. And your details are so vivid as if it was very recently, and your coaching breakdown is even better in terms of how you analyze that season. And I promise you we'll honor that team this upcoming year, get through this pandemic and get everybody back together, because it's been long overdue. And it's interesting to hear your debate and conversation about either Charlie Elverton or Ed Conlon in terms of the greatest player.
Well, I'm sure I'm slighting somebody else, Eddie, but I'll tell you what, it's hard to imagine players that played better, and not just for 1 year, for a career, than I still call him than Mr. Conlon did, or than Charlie Y did.
So Charlie Y will be up in our rafters as well as deserved in terms of retiring his jersey. We were unable to do it a couple of years ago in terms of he's still over in Italy, as you know.
Well, he had 1 year with Portland. He and Sidney Wicks got involved in a little not a demonstration, a protest during the anthem, and Charlie paid for it, and Sidney Wicks didn't. Sidney Wicks was their top draft choice. Charlie was their second pick. He had a really good first year. He went over and had a great career in Italy and Switzerland primarily, and has coached there for a long time, done great stuff. But it's too bad. I think I've only seen Y maybe 3 or 4 times since then, and he's just an incredible. He was an unbelievable teammate, friend. I got to room with him a lot on the road, and he was just that senior. He had a good career, but that senior year was absolutely amazing. The people he played against and how well he played and how effervescent he was. I mean, he was the heart and soul of the team. No question about that.
I love it, and I promise we'll get you both together here soon as we put Charlie Wise' jersey up in the rafters where it belongs at Rose Hill Gymnasium. And so, PJ, you graduate Fordham with that incredible team, that incredible season. You 5 years assistant coach there at Fordham, and obviously getting your basketball coaching career started, going against your dad's direction, as you said.
Exactly.
Stops at New Hampshire College, Wagner, the incredible run at Seton Hall University when the Big East was the end-all be-all of college basketball in this country. 2 Big East Coach of the Years, the Final Four, obviously, in '89, the National Coach of the Year in '89, the championship game in '89. I won't harp too much on that, Coach, I promise you. And then, obviously, the incredible run that, in terms of the NBA, from the Trailblazers to the Warriors, the Spurs with Pop and that incredible run. As you said, the Seattle Supersonics, where you still live in Seattle, to then to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And then, of course, even here in New York City, the Nets, whether it be New Jersey to Brooklyn and what they've kind of built there, just a phenomenal career, Coach. And I mean, so many incredible stops, such an incredible journey. I don't even know how you summarize that or talk about that in terms of the incredible places and the incredible players you've coached and the success you've had.
Well, that's what it was, Eddie. I just was really lucky. I had, over the years, I just had so many great players, and we were lucky. We had also an awful lot of great people. If we did one thing well, particularly when I was in college, we recruited good people. It took us a while to get it turned around. And frankly, I got a chance to, kind of start the old-fashioned way. Hal gave me an opportunity. I learned a ton of things from Hal Whistle. He was a great coach. He came from Lafayette, was at Fordham, later on won a national championship at Florida Southern. Tremendous coach, and then a great career in the NBA. And then I got a chance. My first job literally was an ad in the New York Times, New Hampshire College. Now it's called Southern New Hampshire University. You see the ads on TV all the time. I mean, the school is doing great, but I went up there thinking I would be there for 4 or 5 years. It's my first head job, and hopefully I do a good job there and I'll get something else. And Sully came with me. Tommy Sullivan was my assistant. He had played in Europe after he graduated from Fordham. Sully was my assistant, succeeded me, and had a great career there and at Manhattan College. And I'm there for 1 year, and the job opens up at Wagner, and it was similar to what happened at Seton Hall. A lot of people knew it was rebuilding is a nice way of putting it, but you were going to lose for a long time. I think we had 10 straight losing seasons at Wagner before I got there. And the athletic director, Larry Gerashati, I knew well because he had been the baseball coach at NYU, and I was lucky enough to play baseball at Fordham, first for Danny Ronaldo, and then the incredible, played a couple of years for Gil McDougal, who was one of the nicest men and a great coach, and obviously a great Yankee. I've been a Yankee fan my whole life, but it was such a thrill playing for Gil at Fordham. But I knew Larry Gerashati. He'd been the baseball coach at NYU, and he had in mind, he wanted a young guy from a Metro Division I school, and I just kind of fit his profile. And he hired me at Wagner, and we got our heads knocked off for a couple of years, and we finally got some good players and had a pretty good run. And then the Seton Hall job opened up. Bill Raftery decided to get out of coaching and into broadcasting, which was a great move for him and for all of us that have had a chance to listen to him and have him do our games. I mean, he's so positive. He never says anything negative. He's so entertaining. And now he's the lead analyst for CBS along with Jim Nance and Grant Hill. So he's doing Final Fours and doing fantastic. But they were at the bottom of the Big East. We were at the bottom of the Big East, Seton Hall, along with Providence and UConn, which nobody remembers. St. John's, your school, your old school. No, I know it's not your current school for sure. But St. John's and Georgetown and Syracuse and Villanova were dominant. And the other schools were at the bottom. And it's similar to what we had gone through at Fordham. And they're still going through in some aspects. We didn't make a commitment. Seton Hall had not made the same commitment to the Big East. They were playing the same schools they had been playing for 20 years and said, hey, we've always played St. John's. We've always played Villanova. We can compete with these guys. But those schools, when I got in the Big East, said, "Uh-oh, this is a little bit different. We got to hire full-time assistants. We got to spend money recruiting. In some cases, we got to build practice facilities. We got to build gyms. And, you know, you got to fill the Carrier Dome. You got to fill some of these arenas we were playing in." And that was different. That was a whole different level than we were all used to. And it was predominantly a Catholic school league, but some of the schools realized earlier they needed to make a much different commitment to specifically to their basketball program, but across the board to their entire athletic program. And frankly, Seton Hall and Providence and UConn were slow to realize that. And it took a couple of years, and they finally, all three schools put the resources in, and all that did was put you at ground zero with these other guys who were already doing those things. So it was a long process, but eventually all three of us got to Final Fours. UConn went on and won championships. But when I first got there, Don Perno was at UConn, Joe Mulaney was at Providence, then Rick came in and got them, Rick Pitino got them to a Final Four, and Jim Calhoun came into UConn and eventually, you know, made it one of the best programs in the country. So the Big East, it was a great time. We talked about what a special year 70-71 was. Dave Gavitt, who was our commissioner, just made a great decision when he moved the Big East tournament to Madison Square Garden. And that just kind of legitimized, if you will, it just took it to a whole nother level. Everybody knew how good the teams were. I mean, you had guys like Chris Mullen and Patrick Ewing. We had some of the best players in the country. Jim Boeheim at Syracuse just had a run of guys, Louis and Bowie. And I mean, you know, all of Pearl Washington, all the players, but playing in the Garden that week before the NCAA tournament was one of the most significant things, along with the partnership with ESPN. ESPN started at the same time the Big East did. Big East needed exposure. ESPN needed programming. And it was just one of those marriages that worked out perfect. So I was just lucky. I got to both schools, Wagner and Seton Hall, at a time when they were down. And eventually we got good players and got it turned around. And our assistants at Seton Hall, you know, I say it all the time, and people would say, yeah, you know, the assistants were more important than the head coach, to be honest with you, because once we started getting players, then we could compete, and then we could keep the kids at home. You know, you mentioned our Final Four team was the best team we ever had at the Hall, 1989. But the reason that we got there, the year before, we had gotten Mark Bryant, who was the best player in the state of New Jersey. We had all city players from New York. Johnny Morton used to coach actually at Fordham, was an assistant at Fordham, but John was an all-city player at Walton High School, Gerald Green at Westinghouse, Darrell Walker at All Hallows. And then later on, we got Terry DeHare and Jerry Walker from St. Anthony's. When we got to the point where the best local players realized the opportunity, you could go to our school, you could play on the highest level, your family and friends could see you play, you were still close enough to go home on weekends, and it was amazing. But it took a long time to be able to show the local players, particularly the ones in New York and New Jersey, that this was the best vehicle. St. John's was doing that for years. St. John's, you know, had a history of just getting the best players in New York City and keeping them home. And I remember we had a knockdown, drag-out battle with Felipe Lopez, who was the best player, not just in the city, but in the country, and keeping him here. And even going back to Charlie Wide, Dean Meminger went to Marquette. He was Charlie's teammate at Rice High School, and Charlie stayed home. Tommy Sullivan stayed home. George Zambetti stayed home. So Bart Waterwitz was from New Jersey, from Fort Lee. So getting the local players and convincing them that, hey, you can play the highest level of basketball, but guess what? You can play it right here in your backyard. That's what turned Wagner, and that's what turned Seton Hall.
It's terrific to hear you kind of lay out that blueprint, Coach, in terms of your success, obviously, whether it be Wagner and Seton Hall and what the Big East had put together and what you built at Seton Hall all the way to the national championship game. Because obviously very relevant for us and what we're trying to do as not so much a rebuild. I'm clear to be saying a new construction for us in our men's basketball program. And we're excited about our future. Obviously, a new head coach, Kyle Neptune.
Kyle's great. I got to know Kyle an awful lot doing Villanova games. I still do a lot of Westwood One radio. I do the NCAA tournament for them, and I get Villanova a couple times a year. So I get a chance to, I get to Philly more than I get to New York, but I get a chance to see Jay. And, you know, I knew very well, of course, Tommy Pecora, who I thought did a great job for us at Fordham, but I've known Kyle over the years the same way, gotten to know him and Baker Dunleavy and all the guys that have worked for Jay. Kyle's excellent, and he's going to do a good job. And again, he understands the city. I think he knows what it's going to take to get we can't recruit just in the city, but it would be so important for us to be able to get some of the best New York and New Jersey guys on a regular basis.
Coach, I love that, and I appreciate that. I'm going to continue to pick your brain because we need your help and experience and your wisdom as we continue to this new construction, and excited to have you involved and a part of that process. Coach, I want to touch on, you're one of the rare coaches to have success both in the college and then the NBA side of things. And I say that with the utmost of respect and admiration, where no disrespect to these guys, but Pitino, Calipari, I know Billy Donovan is currently doing now. And I guess, Larry Brown obviously had success crossing over. Not an easy task jumping into that realm. Talk about maybe why and kind of how you would separate the two in terms of your philosophy and strategies.
Well, the difference between me and most of the guys you mentioned, and frankly, most of the guys that have made the jump. Now, again, people forget, you get typecast. Like my first couple of years in the league, I was a college guy. Everything I did, it was like, well, he's a college guy. He does that differently. Now it's to the point where nobody remembers I coached in college. Like people, I'm an NBA guy. Nobody even recollects that I spent 23 years coaching in college. Nobody remembers that anymore. But the difference for me was I got a good team. As simple as that. Paul Allen, I think, had in mind, again, a profile. I think he wanted to hire a college coach when they replaced Rick Adelman, which never should have happened. Rick Adelman did an unbelievable job there and is going into the Hall of Fame. But anyhow, I went out. Brad Greenberg was the acting general manager. I went out and I interviewed, and right in the middle of the interview, Paul Allen shocked me because he offered me the job. I mean, I went out literally, okay, this will be a nice experience. I'll do a NBA. I never thought about coaching in the NBA, and in the middle of the interview, Paul sticks his hand out and goes, "You're my new coach." And I was like stuttering and stammering and going, "Hey, I got to go back and talk to the people at Seton Hall." I mean, Larry Keating, my athletic director who just passed away, knew I was out there, and Monsignor Patillo, our chancellor, knew, but I didn't expect to get the job to begin with. And I certainly didn't expect to get it halfway through the interview. So I was like, whoa. But I went. It was an opportunity. One of the reasons that Portland was so attractive was I had been with Nike for a long time, and Nike's headquartered in Beaverton, right outside of Portland. Mark Bryant, our player that I talked about before, was one of the first team All-Stater in Jersey and took us to the first NIT in I don't know how many years in when he was a junior, and then his senior year, 88, was the first NCAA in the school's history. And Mark Bryant turned our program around. Getting Mark, and we got progressively better each year. Finally got to an NIT his junior year and an NCAA his senior year. And then the very next year after Mark graduated, all those young guys that he played with, those were the guys that got us to the championship in our second NCAA tournament the following year. But I had a good team. So I went to Portland and I had Clyde Drexler, Terry Porter, Buck, Jerome Kersey. So I had a good team. Most guys that go from college to the NBA get expansion teams, or they get terrible teams. And that's what happened. And they get, NBA is like, instant gratification. If you don't win, they want to make a change. And sometimes the coaches were, hey, I'm not buying into this 3 or 4 year plan. I go back to college where I excelled and can make just as much money. So for most people, that was the difference. But Portland used to use this stat because we went to playoffs the first 3 years. The 3 years I was at Portland, I had Dick Harder, who we talked about before, Digger's old boss. But Dick had been Pat Riley's assistant with the Knicks. Rick Carlisle has obviously gone on to win an NBA championship. I knew I didn't know the NBA game, so I hired Dick Harder, Rick Carlisle, and Johnny Davis, who had been a great player for the Trailblazers, and then Elston Turner when Johnny went and took the Sixer job. So I had players coaches who wouldn't let me go wrong. I just had great people, Clyde and Terry and Buck. They were just good to me. They knew that I was a college guy, that I was doing things a little bit differently, and we were able to win. And Cotton Fitzsimmons, a dear friend who passed away and is going to go in the Hall of Fame in September. Cotton and Dave Gavitt, Billy Cunningham, just were great advisors for me. Chuck Daly, so they didn't let me go wrong. And I already knew it from college, but it was driven home even more forcefully in the NBA. When you have good players, you're going to win. And if you don't have good players, particularly in that league, it can be very, very difficult. But it was a great run. I enjoyed my time. 5 years at in San Francisco. I met my wife, Carolyn, there, which was fantastic. We got our heads knocked off a few times, but and I ended up with Pop in San Antonio for 5 great years. And then, I've been bouncing around ever since, Seattle and Oak City, and did a year in Toronto, which I enjoyed. And then you mentioned a year in Jersey playing in the Peru, playing there. And then the following year, we moved to Brooklyn. We opened the Barclays Center, and they made a coaching change typical in the NBA, and I got to replace Avery, and we went on and had a good year in Brooklyn. So I've been lucky. I've been in good places. I've worked for good people. I always had good assistants, Eddie. I always had good assistant coaches. And for most part, I had really good players. And when you have really good players and good assistants, it's hard to screw it up.
I could listen to you talk hoops all day long here. And even while you were in your short stint in Toronto, I know you crossed paths with the voice of the Raptors, our own guy, Jack Armstrong.
Jacko, I was with him all the time. He was doing our games all the time. He'd come across the border from Buffalo, and we, across Niagara Falls. He was great. He and Leo Routens were doing our games, old Syracuse Big East guy. But Jack's still going strong. Jack coached one of my brothers. I'm going to mess it up. I think it was Mark I think it was Mark, because I coached Kevin when Jack was a freshman coach. Or Corey, he coached my youngest brother. He coached Corey. Stan Van Gundy asked for him all the time because Stan was really close with Nick McCarchick, and he knew him, and he always asked, how Corey is, and he still thinks of him as a basketball player. And he's literally the only person in the world that thinks of my brother as a basketball player. Believe me.
Your brother Corey has become my life coach these days. We'll talk more about that, from meditation to everything he's got me going on. But it's been a pleasure to spend some time with him. And Coach, staying with the NBA, I thought it was relevant this week, obviously being with this time right now being the NBA Finals. Your coverage of that, whether it be obviously in terms of the broadcast as well as ESPN, interesting year. And I guess an interesting year also coming off of the bubble. I know you spent some time in that bubble last year as well. Why don't you talk a little bit about the NBA Finals and what you're seeing in the NBA game?
Well, just quick on the bubble. Adam, so it was incredible. First of all, the resources, which the NBA obviously has, but to make that bubble work, I was there for 57 straight days. The players and coaches were there longer, and they were locked up. They had a lot more restrictions than we did in the media. I mean, we couldn't leave hotels. It was tough, but those guys were just there away from their families for the most part until the very end in the playoffs. And to get through that year and what they accomplished in the bubble was amazing. It led to this year. It was a very short preseason. It was a shortened NBA season, only 72 games. But they got through it, and the playoffs has been great. We got new teams in there. We got some young superstars that maybe the country didn't realize. I think obviously the people in Atlanta, maybe the people it's so funny because the two conferences, you really don't know. When you coach in the NBA, in a normal year, you play the teams on your own side 4 times, and you play the teams in the other conference twice, once home and once away, and you really don't know them. Sometimes it'll be months between games when you play them, and somebody will say, how good is Trae Young? And you go, I hardly see him. I was in the Western Conference for most of my years in the NBA until the very end. And they'd ask us about a player, a young guy in particular, in an Eastern Conference team. And I'd say, man, we played them twice. He wasn't at the one game. He was hurt. You don't even know these guys. So the country found out about Trae Young this year in the playoffs. The country found out about Devin Booker. Maybe a lot of the East Coast didn't realize who Devin Booker was. Maybe a lot of the West Coast didn't realize who Trae Young was. Well, they know now, and they're going to know going forward. So it's going to be we got 3 games left. I have no idea. I thought this was going to be a 6 or 7 game series between Milwaukee and Phoenix. I thought we'd all have 1 possession games. We've had 1 good one so far, but it's interesting. We're going to have a new champion. Ironically, these 2 teams came into the NBA together a long time ago. And last night it was great. I wish I had been in the arena, and so we're doing the games remotely. Oscar Robertson and Kareem are sitting next to each other. Lou Alcindor sitting right next to each other. And I, again, I think back, when I think of Kareem, I think of Power Memorial High School, which was basically on our campus. My father also had his NIT office was downtown at Lincoln Center. And I remember visiting, I can't tell you how many, I kid him all the time because we never got the players, but Brendan Malone was the coach at Power Memorial for so long. I still remember his number, like Judson 267-385, whatever the hell it was. All the time we spent there, and we never got a Power guy. But Kareem Lou at the time played for Jack Donahue, who's a Fordham alum. Played for Jack there, and then Jack went on to Holy Cross. But anytime I'm on the Lincoln Center campus on that backside, I look over and I remember that was Power Memorial High School, and it was an amazing place. But the memories right now to see Milwaukee and Phoenix having come so far, and one of them is going to win a championship. It's going to be great for the NBA.
Tremendous stories, tremendous. You and I could spend hours on talking here, and we will for sure. Last question for you, Coach. Obviously, I want to be sensitive to your time. I know you're working here during the finals. Two things, but I'll make it combine it for one question. Your biggest takeaway or kind of memory of Fordham University and what it meant to you, obviously your family, your father, and everything. It's just a powerful, place for your family and what it represents to you. And then advice you would give to. We just recently had it. It's a couple of weeks ago. We had our commencements for all of our student athletes for 2021, Coach. We actually did 2020 as well. We had basically 2 years of graduation because of the pandemic. Advice you would give to any of our students or student athletes who recently graduated and alumni that are hitting the so-called real world right now?
Well, they couldn't have a worse time. I thought the worst thing you could be is a senior in high school, which is what our older son is. Just graduated from Seattle Prep, the Jesuit high school here in town. And it's like, it's been a lost year and a half. And I know it's been like that for a lot of our athletes, the juniors and seniors. Well, what were juniors and seniors, what they've gone through in either having canceled seasons or short seasons or just not being able to do all the things that make athletics so enjoyable and make it such a big part of your college career. But to get out there now, hopefully, they've got some opportunity to do something. And to me, do something for somebody else. Everybody talks about that, the cura personalis and what all the Jesuit colleges and high schools stand for. This is a great time to be out there and have the opportunity to do that, to do something for somebody else. And the time to do it is right now, when you're not worried about families and things like that. You're young, enjoy yourselves, go out and do something good. And Fordham teaches you that. Fordham is such a great school, and the opportunity to go to a school in New York City. Sometimes it took people a year or two. There were people that didn't embrace the city right away. They spent most of their time at Rose Hill inside the gates. And then eventually they realized what a special place it was, and take advantage, the ones that are still there, take advantage of New York City and take the lessons that you learn. I played for great coaches. We talked about Gill, we talked about Mr. Bach and Ed Conlon and Diggert, all of the people that I was lucky enough, Jim Lansing in football, Joe Bernal in water polo. I mean, just great people. But the other people are the guys I remember. Jay McGowan was my class dean, just passed away. He was the president at Bellarmine. And George Shea was our class dean, and later on was the dean of, I think, the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, Joe Camersano, Marty Mead. There were just so many great people that worked at the hall in academics, in athletics, across the board, everywhere. It's always about the people. People say, what's the campus like? And yeah, you talk about that. What's the gym like? But those things didn't matter as much as the people that you came in contact with. And Fordham's always been a really special place because of the kind of people they've had there. And I know that our recent grads, the class of 20 and the class of 21 are going to add to that as they go on, and they do great things. So I genuinely feel badly that I'm so far away. I mean, I'm closer to UW. I know more about Seattle University, which is the Jesuit university here in town, and UW now. I'm more closely involved with them and their programs than I am with Fordham. So Tibbs has got the Knicks going. Hopefully that'll get more trips for me back to New York City, and I can spend some more time on Rose Hill or at Lincoln Center.
So well said, Coach, and I appreciate it. I love your comments about the people, and that is what truly makes Fordham special, whether it be our coaches, our history, our alumni, our parents, our student athletes, the most well-rounded, strongest leaders coming out of New York City with that grit and toughness that you know and be proud of and that you have on your shoulder. I'm super proud to be in this chair and represent what your dad has built here and your family's legacy here. I promise, similar to our women's basketball program and their success, we'll get a
Oh, I tell you what, now she's my buddy. Dutch, the son was with us at San Antonio, so we knew good. So Stephanie, I follow that program. Another guy that bridged you and my father, Frankie McLaughlin, a good friend. Frankie was the captain of the team, and then the assistant coach with Digger our senior year. Frankie was the assistant coach. Frankie was a Fordham prep guy who stayed home and obviously has been a great contributor to Fordham over the years. Julio's still there. There's not a lot. There's not a lot of guys still there that were there when I was there, but you see what women's basketball is doing. You see what the various sports, the success they're having in softball and in baseball and soccer, all the programs. And I know Kyle's going to get that done in basketball also, but those resources, some of those people are still there. And I got to get back and spend time with them.
I love that. Yes, we're truly lucky and blessed with Stephanie and Frank McLaughlin, the pillars of this institution, this athletics department. And Coach Noel, we'll get you back here. We look forward to spending more time with you. And I appreciate you spending some time with us today. And I know our alums are absolutely going to love this conversation and going down memory lane, because I could listen to it all day. I know they feel the same way. My best to you and your family, and we so appreciate your time.
Thanks, Eddie. Great being with you. Go Rams.
Go Rams.